What's up, the world? This your boy Tommy, man. I came to speak about something that I find to be very, very annoying, personal, even. Megan Rapinoe, who's a soccer player for the U.S. Women's National Team, decided that she's gonna go on TV and announce her retirement. Now, nobody gives a shit about her retiring because nobody watches women's soccer. 90% of people probably more know her more for being an activist than they do for being a soccer player. But for those that follow soccer, she's a very good player. She's a really good player. But she's also an extremely privileged player. But that doesn't negate my point, right? It doesn't negate the narrative, and I don't want to get away from the narrative, derive away from the opening narrative. So the open narrative is that Megan says that if you say that people like Dave Chappelle and all these people who speak against women in sports, they don't give two craps about women's sports, and they don't give two craps about women's sports, and nobody cares. They don't give two craps. They're pretending to care about women's sports because none of them have ever cared about women's sports. And their words lead to the direct violence upon trans kids. Ridiculous, right? So let's first break down that statement, okay? To say, like now they give us about women's sports. Okay, so first and foremost, let's break that down and actually explain what she's trying to get at, right? Excuse me. What Megan Rapinoe is trying to say in that statement is, well, they don't care about women's sports because clearly they don't come out to support us anyway. Well, Megan Rapinoe, that is one of the main reasons why that there should not be a situation where these people are taking advantage of these situations, right? Because women don't get a lot of don't get the pump in circumstances that the man get. It's hardly any incentive in them doing any sports. So when you start to go out and allow men to play alongside them, you kind of run into a situation where the men tend to way outdo the women, and then if that's the case, sooner or later, if the money in the women's sports start to go up, now you're gonna have a lot of men who can't make it as men, who will sooner make it as will say, oh well, I am a woman, so I should compete with women. And it's like, yeah, but you're not a woman. You're a man who transitioned into a woman. You can have whatever ideology you choose to have. That's up to you. But reality matters. And if you choose to go out and play against my daughter, who has worked her entire life to play against women who are on the same biological level as she is, then you are going to meet resistance from me because you're taking positions that were specifically made for women. Title IX is something that was made because women were not given the same opportunities as men. So when you start to discourage, and this is one of the problems that a lot of people have when they started to blur the line between a woman and a man, is what is that going to do when it comes to women's rights? What is that going to do when it comes to things like domestic violence? What is that going to do when it comes to things like statistics in the statistic representation of women, if the term woman or man can be so easily misdefined. So you're not going to have any clear parameters that say, hey, we need to have more women in this sector, we need to have more men in that sector. You're not going to be able to do that because if a woman is allowed to identify as a man and a man is allowed to identify as a woman, you're going to run into a lot of problems. But what I realize about a lot of people on the left is it's more about narrative and pushing an agenda to make people believe what they believe than it is about actually explaining and explain. No, it's not just the left. The right does this too, but the left does it more so in a way that gets under my skin, right? Because they do it while being a bully, while still believing that they should get the protections of a victim. It's like, well, if you disagree with me, I'm going to paint you in a way that makes you dangerous to society, and then try to get you to be persecuted based on what you believe, because I'm just going to say society that we don't do this in polite society. This is the norm. You need to get aboard, jump aboard, or you need to leave. Somebody said something yesterday that I think made a lot of sense. They said Megan Rapinoe doesn't give two craps about soccer anymore. She's done with it. She's done playing, and she's been not that good. She's been taking up a spot on that women's national team that she was grandfathered into for years, and she's not really been contributing much. She barely even plays now. So what's the statement or the question that is being begged there? She understands she needs a career after soccer, and her career after soccer is probably going to be a talking head idiot that speaks and talks about it. But she's not really popular, right? Nobody really knows who Megan Rapinoe is outside of people who watch soccer and women's soccer, to be specific. Nobody really knows her. Nobody knew her before she got on the women's national team, and no one knows her after she got on the women's national team. She's a good player. At one point she was a great player. But what makes me so mad about the women's national team is they are everything wrong with the feminist movement. Okay, let's first break it down, right? Megan Rapinoe plays for the women's national team. If anybody doesn't understand how hard it is for somebody to get on the women's national team, let me explain it to you. Okay, most players, soccer is not like football, right? Soccer is a very it's gatekeeper heavy. It's very heavy, right? It's a very subjective sport, meaning there's no stats to say you're better than this player or that player does this better than you. Everything is subjective and relies on plausible deniability. I can just say anybody is better than anybody, and it's really hard to prove that somebody is not better than you because there's no stats. So when you sit there and you watch it, they really only score two stats: goals and assists and saves by the goalie. But offensively, the field players only got two metrics: goals and assists. And everything else is team awards, right? The win goes to the team. A shutout goes to the defense. It doesn't go. There is nothing there that says if the game is a shutout, it could be a shutout, and the team was so garbage that they never got across the line of scrimmage. So the defense didn't play well. They got a shutout because the team they were playing against just wasn't that good. So defense, it's very hard to gauge how good a player is. Offensively, it's subjective as hell. Like, a person can go out and score four goals, and everybody can still say they played a bad game. They'll say they didn't pass enough. They can say that they didn't do this well enough. They didn't do that well enough. It's extremely subjective. Now, anybody who is black understands that shit don't go well for us generally when it's left up to the mindset of white people when they can use subject, plausible, and plausible deniability. It generally doesn't work out well for us because 90% of the time when they're making those decisions, they're making those decisions with an unknown bias that they don't pay attention to, right? So it's like what they do with the quarterback position, right? Whenever a black person plays, when black people do something, it seems a detriment. Black players are athletic, so they try to paint athleticism as it's a detriment to playing quarterback. Until white people started being athletic, and all of a sudden now it's a narrative that you got to be athletic to play quarterback. But it wasn't a narrative when black quarterbacks were athletic, because at that time they did not want to make quarterback an athletic position because they did not think that white guys would have the opportunity to compete. So they don't want to make it seem like athleticism is the most important part or an important part of playing quarterback, because then kids who are not athletic will be barred from doing it. Totally understand that. That's still a bias. because at the end of the day, the best player is supposed to play, and we're not making positions so that your kids can be able to play. We're making positions so that the best players can play. But instead, when you mark and you do all this stuff, this is the narrative that is perfect. That allowed them to be able to say, well, we don't let black players play basketball because they're just not smart enough to play. We don't let them play point guard because it's not smart enough to play. I mean, people forget they weren't even able. Black people weren't really able to play quarterback until, even though it was allowed technically, and it was discrimination laws put against it. They still quietly discriminated against black people until the early to mid 90s. They were still doing that. They were still preventing black people from playing that position under this false bias. So what ends up happening a lot of times is whenever a black person makes a mistake, it is seen as he cannot understand. When a white person make a mistake, it's seen as they can understand it. They just made a mistake. But the problem comes around when you start to quantify how often these white person is making a mistake and it's seen as a mistake, and how many times the black person is making a mistake and it's seen as he's not smart enough to understand it. There's a narrative out there when you watch, and this is why when you have no diversity when it comes to the booths and things of that nature, you watch the booth. I have to turn when a black quarterback is playing, I have to turn off my sound, because I'll get so distracted by them constantly pointing out every single mistake he makes. Yet there can be a complete upset, because I say this all the time. And after I was saying it, my wife started talking, and she was like, why do you focus on that so much? I said, I don't focus on it. It's just hard not to pay attention to it because they do it so often. And she was like, oh, well, they just criticized that guy. I said, okay, because she didn't really understand what I was saying. I said, okay, well, we're going to watch it. I said, I'm turning you 3 different games. 3 of these games, there's a black quarterback and there's a white quarterback. I said, watch what happens. I said, we're going to watch it. And we're going to watch it and hear something they say about black. Black quarterback throws it a little to the outside. Bad throw. That he has to understand. You got to get that ball out here. He's throwing it here, and if he gets it out a little further, then that's a catch. Like white, flick it back to the white. Same exact play. Guy misses it. Quarterback misses it. Incomplete. Well, third and fourth, and so punting team comes out, and they're gonna have to punt it. It's that and third. Replay shows, doesn't say a word. They talk about the defender, they talk about the wide receiver, don't say nothing about the quarterback. Okay, could be a coincidence. Come back in. By the end of those games, she was like, "Wow, why doesn't anybody ever say anything about that?" I said, "People do say anything about that. Say things about that." I said, but the end of the day, the reason why people don't like to say things about these things is because they understand that anytime you say anything about race, they say you're using the race card. So they have almost made it more of an offensive gesture to point out racism or unconscious bias than they are about someone blatantly being racist. So it's easier for a person to be blatantly racist and get the benefit of the doubt than you get the benefit of the doubt as somebody calling somebody racist. If you call somebody racist, the narrative is that you're afraid of hard words. Oh, you don't want honest criticism. You don't want this, you don't want that. But it's like, no, I want it to be fair. But because it's kind of unfair for you to give me honest criticism, you're not talking about him in the same way, but at the end of the year, he still has his job and I lost mine. That's not fair. It's not about me caring about honest criticism. That's about me saying that this playing field is not level. Because 90% of the people who are calling the game don't look like me and don't play the game like I play it. What do you think is going to happen when 90% of the people in the booth are white pocket quarterbacks? You think that they're going to be keen about talking about somebody saying that the new type of breed of quarterback is going to outdate the type of quarterback that they play? No. If you try to say that this player is better, no, they're going to try to point out all the things that make their style of play better. And this is the same thing when you talk about when you go into other sports. Soccer's the same way. It's a subjective sport. So 90% of the time, what I've found since I've been putting my kid in soccer is that they really do not like athleticism. It annoys them. So whenever somebody is athletic, they are purely, when they're black, they're purely athletic. They're not seen as good players. They're just seen as athletic because they've already written their unconscious bias that says if a person is good, is athletic, then it kind of negates them being considered good. So I can be good and athletic, but this is never considered that. It's always just considered athletic. The white girl can be unathletic, but she's considered good because she's a good heady player. Now, amongst all majority of sports, there's some players that are a step or two before others, and they are truly talented players. So I'm not trying to say that a person can't be unathletic and still be considered good. That's fine. But if me being athletic, no matter how good and skilled and heady I am, it doesn't matter if I'm considered athletic. Everything is seen under that prism. She's not good. She's athleticism. My daughter's been playing competitive soccer for 4 years now, right? Every single black girl she's played has played defender, and the closest I think they came to the front was I'm talking about not girls that are not like the more like biracial light skinned girls. I'm talking about like the darker skinned girls. They always play in the back. They always play in the back, or the closest they get to the front is midfield. And I've seen this since she started playing. Not one. I think I've seen maybe one that played in the front. But it's clearly something. But those players, the players that I'm talking about, they're generally the better players on the team. Almost every time you play, right? And that's not to say that the white players aren't good, because the white players are good too. But the players that you sit there and you watch, they're just as good, but they always play in the back and the other ones play in the front. So it's hard when you sit there and you watching it, it starts to bother you. But the funny thing about it is male soccer is the exact opposite way. All the black or the Latino, Spanish players, they play in the front, generally, which I always find to be odd, that the racism in male soccer is way higher. But when you look at it in America, you can clearly see they're trying to bring an element of diversity to the male side. Man, I don't think they really give two craps about bringing diversity to the female side. And when you watch it, it's I think the women's national team has been around for something like since 1990 something, and so somewhere between 25, 30 years, somewhere in there, right? And they've had 14 black players on their team. This is not counting people that are biracial, right? I mean, this is counting people that are biracial. So and identify as black, even though they're probably presenting as white. And then people say, well, why is that important? Well, that's important because it's a brand, right? It's a brand. And what they found is the brand is, they don't give a crap about the fact that the brand is not popular in general. The brand is popular to their demographic, which is middle-aged, middle-aged soccer moms, right? Soccer mom is relatively a white term, right? You don't see a lot of black soccer moms. Most of the time, when you do the term soccer mom, it's presented as a middle-aged housewife or a middle-aged white mom. That is generally it's not seen as a black mom, and that's because majority of people who play soccer are white, female and male. So when you break it down, you focus in on the good and the bad of things. You say, okay, that's fine. Majority of the white players are white, but you can clearly see a consistency bias there, in which I've been watching it my entire life, and I know the goalpost gets moved a lot. Where you sit there and you watch it and say, well, a person has to do this to be good, they're going to do that to be good, that's fine. But when a person showcases themselves to be able to do certain things, and you constantly see a narrative in which these things don't work well, it starts to bother you. It truly does start to bother you, because you start to be like, okay, what does, if you're a player in soccer and you and they say you're bad, or you need to get better at something, or you're not good at this thing, there is no way to have a subjective, there's no way to have an objective argument, because most of the arguments are subjective, meaning, it's my opinion. So it really is more of a sport where there's no way to regulate it, because they don't keep any stats. So at the end of the day, they can just say whatever they want to say, and you just kind of go along with it, because there's no thing. So when those situations come around, it's very hard for you to keep rising up the ranks to the point that you can get to the women's national team. Now, if you're most of the time, if you're a good white player, you're probably all you have to do is be good. If you're good, then you get there. When it comes to the black players, it's different, because you're dealing with a subjective system that is primarily focused in giving your opportunities by people that don't look like you, right? So the people that don't look like you, they have a play style, and considering that they look like the people that don't look like you, they probably have the skill set of the people that look like them more than the skill set of the people of someone like you. So you're already, before the tryouts generally start, you're already behind the 8 ball, because generally your style of play is not going to is not going to fit in with generally their coaching style and or their style of play when they play. So most of the time, they're going to be able to see the talents of the person that can do what they did, but they're not going to be able to see the talents in a person that does things that they can never do, because they probably spent their entire career minimizing that skill because they never had it, and they're competing with people who did. So if you were an athletic person who could do, and they say the narrative is those who cannot play coach. Those who cannot do, coach. And the reason why they say that is because a lot of times people who become coaches or people who wanted to play the sport could not achieve any resemblance of resolution to that need to showcase that talent in that sport. And they get to a point where they love the sport, yet they haven't really let go of it. So they'll say, okay, well, then I'll coach and try to see if I can get some secondhand, achievement vibes. And then they'll go to that secondhand thing, and then there's still a level of resentment there because they wanted to achieve a height that they couldn't achieve. So now they're sitting up there and they're watching games, and they competed against people who are like naturally talented, and in those situations, ain't nothing nobody can do in those situations outside of play their best. But if the guy calling shots and picking the team decides to say, oh well, that style of play is not really what I like, and he can do that for as long as he wants. He just continually do it. So after a while, it's not a surprise when 90% of the people who are picking the team look like these players, that 90% of the players picked at the end don't look like people who look like me. They're gonna be people who look like them, because it's not a bias in which they're doing it because they hate black people or because they don't want to see black people's successes. They can't understand, and they have not been taught to see it in that light. They've only been taught to see it one way, especially Americanized players, players who never played abroad. They only play here in America. They don't understand they play a very boring, straightforward game. So they want players that can be a cog in the machine more than they want a player that you would want in basketball that you just say, hey, get that person the ball and let them go make for everybody else. They don't really want that. They want to be able to get the credit as the coach. And if you have an exceptional player that can do a lot of great things, they want to minimize the role of the exceptional player so that they can get recognition for the style that they choose to play. And I think that's why in most of the time soccer it's more about the coach than it is about the players. When all the other sports, I think it's the opposite. But it's really hard to move up those ranks because you have to continually get in front of people that see that subjectively see the game the same way you do, right? So it's harder and harder to get up there because there's only one national team. I think it's like 23 players, and there's no connection in connection to how years. I mean, these girls play. I mean, the average player plays in like 3 World Cups or 6 World Cups and like 4 Olympics or something like that, which is like all in all, like 3 Olympics, which is like 12 years to, I don't know, like, yeah, I think something like 12 to 14 years, somewhere in there. That's before the average person retires. So that means you don't only have to be better than someone who is, your age. You have to be better than, you're generally going to be better than a girl who's 40 years old or 32, 33 years old. But because she's on the team and she's grandfathered on that team, doesn't matter how much better you are than she is, she has a grandfather spot, meaning she's going to get a spot. So majority of times they're looking to replace with new players, every now and again, maybe 5, 6 players that open spots because people can't go because of whatever reason, injuries, they don't want to do it this year. It's all different reasons. What I'm trying to say is that once you get on the team, you're grandfathered in. But it's not really a thing where they're constantly being asked to do any of these things. And a girl like Megan Rapinoe, I think it's annoying to me and a lot of these feminists are annoying to me, especially the white ones. It's like the whole Marvel thing. Oh, there's no diversity, and then next thing you know, the next 12 movies got a white woman as the lead. It's like, okay, did you want diversity or did you want to have a situation where you can put more white women in? Right? I can't understand how you can stand on get turned down by a national court, and stand up in a public and say, we're being treated unfairly because we're women. When in 25 quarter century, you've had less than 15 black players on your team, and you gonna stand up there and pull the equality card? Give me a damn break. And when I say less than 15, that's Spanish and black. So if you sit up there and you got the audacity to stand up and talk about somebody treating you unfairly, when you can make the argument that you sit up there and saying, like, okay, so they're treating you unfairly, but no one stopped to ask you, are you doing anything that may be fair, based on, if we're not going to go into context and just talk about the raw tax of the numbers. You're saying that you should not be getting paid, even though I can literally show you legal documents in which you signed documents stating that you would get paid a certain amount because you did not want to risk like the men did and get paid on your merit. You wanted to grandfather yourself into getting paid something. So during COVID, they got paid when the men didn't, and in that situation, they got paid, the men didn't get paid, and then they turned around afterwards and said, well, the men made more. It's like, well, they made more because they signed a completely different contract that was based on merit. You signed a contract that was based on guarantee. So that's what happens. Generally, to get guaranteed, you got to be understanding you're taking a risk at losing more money on the back end. You chose to take that deal, then came around after that situation and said, oh,
Well, it's not fair to us. The question can be asked in a subjective sport in which there is no criteria to no clear-cut criteria to pick a team. It is very suspect that y'all don't make a real effort to have a lot of diversity on y'all team. So if that is the case, then now we gotta start asking a different question. Where's your proof that you're not a racist organization with no diversity? So it's a joke that they fight for diversity when they have no diversity. They don't have real diversity on their own team. But that's okay. That's fine. You have to just assume that those are the best players, and that's why they're getting to the top. You got nothing to do with 90% of the people picking a team look like them. I mean, 100% of the people picking the teams look like them. They ain't got nothing to do with nothing. No, that's just the best of the best. Well, why can't we give the men that mindset? That, oh, well, you know, they're better than you guys. They garner more attention, so they should get paid more. But instead, they finagled these men into, they could not win it in court. They lost the case in court. So the right thing to do is to tell them to go away. But Megan Rapinoe fought for that. She didn't, and putting her in the same breath as somebody fighting for civil rights or fighting for rights is ridiculous. That lady was not fighting for any rights. She was fighting to take advantage of a situation. She knew she was leaving. So majority of those guarantees were guaranteed to players that are retired and stuff like that. She tried to put herself in a position so that when she retired, she could still make money. This is disgusting. And she did it at the expense of these males who are going to be joining this team. Let's be completely frank. Soccer players do not make a lot of money in comparison to other athletes. The average soccer player does not make as much as a hockey player makes. They make substantially less, and their league is not doing great ratings wise. So they're making a good chunk of their money through playing overseas or playing on the national team and getting to the Gold Cup. I mean, the World Cup and things of that nature. They have to focus on this extent extra money. And now you're saying they have to split it with women who are not garnering not even close to the interest that the men are. They're not getting the same type of viewership. They're not bringing in the same type of money. They're not doing anything that should require them to be on equal footing when it comes to a split pay. So they essentially were able to finagle the U.S. board to give them all the guarantees they got in the last contract while giving them part of the men's salary. She did that. Yet she's standing there saying nobody cares about women's sports when we got a WNBA in which the men are paying for them. Now you got a women's national team in which the men are paying for them. Yet you're sitting up here saying that nobody cares about women's sports. No, people care about women's sports, but they want women's sports to be put on the same mindset as men's sports. If you're going to be playing a sport, then play that sport without the restraint, same risk that the men have to take, you should have to take. You shouldn't be playing in subsidized leagues in which men are giving you their salaries so that you can be able to compete with them. If your mindset is that you're competing and you're on equal footing with the men, then do what the men are doing. Generate revenue. But when you don't turn around and say it's a process of masculinity and people hating women or people not supporting women. No, there are people who have children who play sports and they do support their child playing sports. But at the end of the day, they understand when they put their child in the sport that they're probably not going to get the same fanfare that their son is going to get when he gets in this sport, because they're just not playing it at the same level. Even if she is good, the competition around her probably isn't. So at the end of the day, there's always going to be a barrier to how good you can be. But these people spend so much time finagling and stealing and doing what she does, and equate that to violence against trans people, and to say that trans people should be able to play because you know in your heart of hearts you no longer going to be playing against them. It to me it's some real evil junk. I know I ain't gonna be playing with them, so you guys catch up. I'm gonna be preaching that men should be able to play against you in a soccer game. Even though we lost to U15 boys. It's like, stop. Like, come on. You and I both know that you've been playing soccer. If you play soccer, you know men, the boys play the girls all the time. It's not a competition, generally. And we're not talking about years and years. I mean, it could be 2-3 years. And it's not a competition. So to sit there and say that the girls should be able to play with the boys and the boys should be able to, I mean, that's a good thing to say when you retire. It's not a good thing to say when you got a plan. But anyways, please comment. Let me know what y'all think. Thumbs it up if you like it. And please, if you're not subscribed, subscribe. All right, y'all. Peace.